Millionaire switched his pregnant wife's baby at birth. The mistress's reaction was shocking. Power and wealth can inspire extraordinary ambition, but they can also spawn unthinkable betrayal. In this dramatic tale, a self-made millionaire commits a shocking act, switching his pregnant wife's baby at birth to hide a disturbing secret. Under the veneer of luxury and success lies a life teetering on the edge, propelled by a desperate mistress and a ruthless hunger for control. As hidden truths bubble to the surface, they ignite a chain reaction that leaves innocent lives in turmoil. Love, loyalty, and destiny collide in a frenzy of heartbreak, deception, and, ultimately, karmic payback. Prepare to be riveted by this unforgettable saga. Alexander Caldwell had been charming people from a very young age, smooth in conversation, dazzling with his wit, and relentless in pursuit of success. He'd grown up in a modest family in upstate New York, where his father was an office clerk and his mother a schoolteacher. From the very moment he understood what it meant to want more in life, Alexander knew he would strive for greatness. Whether it was skipping meals to save up for a new suit in high school or pulling all-nighters in the local library to get better grades, there was an intensity within him that outmatched anyone else around. Hard work became his armor, determination his blade. By the time he was 30, Alexander Caldwell had transformed from a scrappy small-town dreamer into a formidable millionaire. He had an uncanny ability to gauge market trends, buying undervalued startups and nurturing them into profitable ventures. His name was whispered in the corridors of renowned financial institutions, and his business partners came to respect him as a visionary. Confident, wealthy, and devastatingly handsome, Alexander was accustomed to bending circumstances to his will. Along the way, he met Evelyn Marsh, who was everything he wasn't: sweet-tempered, empathetic, and thoroughly uninterested in the cutthroat world of corporate intrigue. She worked as a graphic designer for a small advertising agency and cared more about her local animal shelter's charity drive than about the complexities of stock markets and mergers. Alexander was drawn to her like a moth to a gentle flame. She represented a grounded warmth he often missed in the high-stakes realm of big business. Her beauty wasn't glamorous in the typical sense, but it radiated from her heart outward. She had long, auburn hair that curled softly at the edges and expressive hazel eyes that regarded each person with a warm curiosity. She laughed easily, often, and with such purity that it left Alexander breathless. Despite initial disbelief among her friends that a quiet, artistic woman could be with such a high-powered businessman, Evelyn and Alexander found joy in each other's company. For a while, it seemed like a match written in the stars. Months flew by like seconds. Alexander proposed, and Evelyn, with tears of genuine happiness, accepted. The wedding was a grand affair at the historical Plaza Hotel in New York City. The guest list was lavish, an eclectic mix of startup founders, wealthy patrons, and Evelyn's close-knit group of artist friends. Despite the extravagance, the most memorable moment for everyone was the look on Alexander's face when he saw Evelyn walk down the aisle in a fitted lace gown. He seemed genuinely awestruck, tears welling in his eyes for the first time in years. To the outside world, it was a fairy tale wedding. But the vows that spoke of unwavering devotion were overshadowed in Alexander's heart by a greed that never fully extinguished. Even in his happiest moments, a lurking voice in his mind whispered, "Is this all? Could there be more?" Not just more money or power, but a different kind of excitement, a different kind of thrill. That gap in his soul created a crack in the foundation of the marriage, a crack that, while not immediately visible, would eventually grow into a chasm. Evelyn had no clue that Alexander's roving eye would test the boundaries of their bond. Though her husband spent long hours at Caldwell Industries, his growing business empire, She didn't suspect anything beyond the typical sacrifices demanded by a competitive career. She awaited his rare nights off, greeting him with tender smiles and lovingly prepared dinners. Her unwavering support and genuine innocence made him feel appreciated, though he quickly realized that he thrived on more than just a stable relationship. And so, in the second year of their marriage, a venomous seed sprouted in Alexander's life, a mistress named Vanessa Rivers. She was hired as a marketing consultant at Caldwell Industries, a recommendation by Alexander's CFO, who praised her tenacity and charisma. Tall, raven-haired, and polished, Vanessa was both fiercely ambitious and magnetic in her presence. She wore her confidence like a second skin, striding through the corporate hallways in impeccable tailored suits. When she first caught Alexander's eye, she returned his lingering look with a coy smile. A silent invitation flickered in her dark eyes. Vanessa recognized an opportunity when she saw one. She knew Alexander was married, but the allure of wealth, power, and the possibility to climb social and professional ladders was too great. She fed Alexander's ego with well-timed compliments, always ready with the right words to stoke his ambition. Their professional interactions morphed from business lunches into late-night dinners in private clubs. Before long, dinner conversations turned into stolen kisses in the backseat of limousines, and eventually, nights in penthouse suites. At first, Alexander was skilled at keeping his secret life away from Evelyn. He offered the perfect excuses meetings with overseas clients, urgent conferences in different cities. He showered his wife with gifts and replaced his presents with expensive tokens, wrongly assuming it would fill the emotional void. But Evelyn, who had grown up with the understanding that love meant dedication, never suspected he was lying. Her only discomfort was that she began to sense his detachment, a coldness in his demeanor when he was home. She rationalized it as stress. After all, he bore immense responsibilities. She promised herself she would support him and wait for him to find balance again. However, a big surprise was lurking around the corner. Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. That day, she had visited Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore for a scheduled art therapy workshop she was conducting for pediatric patients. A routine checkup at the hospital's clinic turned into stunning news. She was carrying a child. Overjoyed, she couldn't wait to tell Alexander, believing a baby would bring them closer, bridging whatever gap had formed between them. When she broke the news during a rare dinner date, tears of happiness glistened in her eyes. Alexander, busy checking his phone for business notifications, seemed momentarily stunned. He plastered on an excited smile, an act he had perfected in his dealings with clients, and reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Evelyn took that gesture as genuine enthusiasm, but inside, Alexander's mind was churning. A child wasn't part of his current plan. He was already juggling the guilt of an affair, plus an empire that demanded constant attention. A baby with Evelyn would complicate his carefully maintained double life. Yet, on the surface, he played the doting father-to-be, accompanying her to prenatal appointments when his schedule allowed, and assuring her he would be there every step of the way. His real focus, however, was on a covert idea that was forming a monstrous plan that he scarcely believed himself capable of conceiving. As months passed, Vanessa Rivers was none too happy about the idea of Alexander having a child with Evelyn. She knew that it would inevitably claim Alexander's devotion, overshadowing the hold she had on him. She had worked tirelessly to insert herself into every corner of his life, learning his business strategies, studying his preferences, even managing to secure a financial commitment for her own budding startup from him. The baby threatened all of it. One late night, in the dimly lit lounge of an exclusive country club, Vanessa confronted him, swirling a glass of champagne in her manicured hand. "What are you going to do about it?" she demanded, her voice low and urgent. "You know a baby changes things. Evelyn is going to want more of your time. And if you start playing house with her—" Alexander cut her off with a deep sigh. "I know," he said, eyes flicking over the hushed crowd. "We need to be careful about how we proceed. I can't risk losing everything I've built just because you and Evelyn are in conflict." Vanessa's gaze sharpened. "I've sacrificed a lot for you, Alexander. I've turned down other men, lost opportunities, and focused on you. If you think I'm going to stand by and let you become Mr. Family, man, you're mistaken." The conversation ended with tension unresolved, leaving Alexander to dwell on an idea he had been toying with in the shadows of his mind. Though he told himself it was insane, he rationalized that money could buy anything, even the cooperation of certain medical professionals. If he had the power to control the situation, why not use it? He was not a man who waited for life to happen to him. He made life happen for himself. He kept the plan close to his chest. Initially, he needed to ensure the outcome served him best, whether or not Vanessa would remain with him in the long run. He made phone calls to individuals with questionable ethics, scouting for any lead that could help him manipulate hospital records or staff. His vantage was that the baby's identity, Evelyn's baby, could be swapped with another infant if the right amount of money exchanged hands. The notion was monstrous, but Alexander had always believed that the ends justified the means. As the due date for Evelyn's baby drew nearer, the gravity of his plan sank deeper into reality. Never once did Evelyn suspect the darkness swirling beneath the surface of Alexander's supportive facade. She spent her days designing a whimsical nursery, painting pastel animals on the walls, all the while believing her husband was away on pressing business matters. In her mind, everything was set for the arrival of their child, which she believed would anchor their future in love and stability. Vanessa, for her part, began to sense Alexander was hiding something from her as well. He was meticulous about the details he shared, and she caught fragments of hushed phone calls, references to large sums of money being transferred. A tiny part of her suspected it involved controlling or even ending Evelyn's pregnancy, maybe a payoff to keep the mother somewhere far away. But she never imagined something as brazen and horrifying as swapping babies at birth. In truth, Vanessa had her own secrets. Despite her ambition and her attempts to cling to Alexander's wealth, she was not as financially secure as she pretended. Her extravagant wardrobe and luxury lifestyle were built on credit cards and the occasional gifts from older suitors she'd known before Alexander. She also had an ailing mother in another state, quietly draining her resources. The pressure to marry Alexander, or at least secure a more permanent position in his life, weighed heavily on Vanessa's shoulders. If she couldn't do that, she risked slipping back into the precarious financial state she'd emerged from. As the tension escalated, Vanessa grew increasingly resentful of Evelyn. She fantasized about a future in which she was the one bearing Alexander's child, thus cementing her importance in his world. She loathed how Evelyn, with her unassuming warmth, managed to occupy that sacred space. The more Vanessa dwelled on it, the more she willed some grand shift in circumstance that would place her in a position of power over Evelyn. The final month of Evelyn's pregnancy arrived. Every day she battled waves of fatigue and backaches, but her spirit remained buoyed by the excitement of imminent motherhood. She would sit by the nursery, humming lullabies she remembered from her childhood, her hands on her swollen belly. She recorded notes for a future scrapbook, notes that read like private letters to the unborn child, promising a life filled with love and creativity. Meanwhile, Alexander's business soared to new heights, ironically in tandem with the moral lows he was about to hit. Caldwell Industries inked a lucrative deal with a major tech conglomerate, bringing in millions. The media hailed Alexander Caldwell as a genius entrepreneur. His social media pages were filled with congratulatory messages and philanthropic accolades, including a recent donation he had made to fund new classrooms in underprivileged neighborhoods. Outsiders admired him as a man with a heart of gold, never suspecting the monstrous act he was orchestrating. A week before the baby's due date, Alexander slipped into a private meeting with Dr. Lionel Rivers, no relation to Vanessa, though the coincidence in surnames never escaped Alexander's sense of irony. Dr. Rivers was a respected obstetrician at the very hospital where Evelyn planned to give birth, Johns Hopkins Hospital. For the right price, Dr. Rivers agreed to certain manipulations of documentation and oversight in the delivery room. The plan was laid out in chilling detail. Alexander would be alerted as soon as Evelyn went into labor. Dr. Rivers would discreetly switch the newborn with another infant, whose birth mother had signed away her parental rights under dire financial circumstances. Alexander would fund that mother's departure to another state, ensuring no loose ends. But that was only half the story. The mistress, Vanessa, had no idea that the baby Alexander intended to install as Evelyn's was. In fact, Vanessa's own secret child, a child she had conceived earlier in her life but had kept hidden, claiming a miscarriage to the father. Alexander, upon discovering Vanessa's darkest secret through private investigators, recognized the twisted opportunity. The other mother, the one with dire financial circumstances, was none other than Vanessa, though disguised under a different name in the hospital records. She was desperate to keep this child a secret from the world, having carried it to full term away from prying eyes, hoping to secure a lavish hush fund from Alexander in exchange for her silence. For Vanessa, the plan was different in her head. She believed Alexander would use the swapped baby to blackmail Evelyn or keep Evelyn's real child away from her. She never dreamed the baby that would land in Evelyn's arms would be Vanessa's own. The layers of betrayal were becoming almost too convoluted to track a labyrinth of secrets only Alexander controlled. At 2:00 a.m., the call came. Evelyn's water had broken. She had gone into labor while working on a last-minute design for a charity event. Rushed to Johns Hopkins Hospital, she was admitted to a private suite. Groggy from contraction pains, she clutched Alexander's hand in relief when he arrived. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're doing great, my love. We're in this together." In those hushed hours of pain and anticipation, Evelyn clung to him, tears of both joy and fear streaming down her face. She had faith that this moment, the birth of their child, would cement their bond. The medical staff moved around them with professional precision, hooking her up to monitors, checking vital signs, administering an epidural. A nurse assured her the baby was healthy, that everything looked normal. But behind closed doors, Dr. Rivers was carrying out a macabre script. He messaged Alexander with the update, "All is prepared." The next part of the night unfolded in a blur for Evelyn, who was hardly aware of her surroundings as labor intensified. Sometime around 3:30 a.m., her son came into the world, wailing and pink. Evelyn's tears of relief flowed freely. She reached out, hoping to cradle the baby, to press him against her chest and feel that first treasured moment of mother-child bond. But Dr. Rivers, glancing over her sweaty, exhausted face, insisted on whisking the infant away for a quick check-up. Moments later, an unsettling hush settled over the room. Evelyn was fatigued, drifting in and out of consciousness. She only vaguely remembered Alexander stepping out with the doctor. She never saw the swap take place, her real son, whom she had carried for 9 months, being exchanged for Vanessa's infant, just born a short while earlier in a different part of the hospital. When Dr. Rivers returned, the baby in his arms looked so similar newborns can be almost indistinguishable to inexperienced eyes, yet it was. In fact, a different child. He placed the swapped infant in Evelyn's arms, praising her stamina and telling her that her baby was perfectly fine, healthy as could be. Sobbing in relief, Evelyn kissed his forehead, naming him Liam, the name she and Alexander had chosen. She never noticed the flicker of guilt in Alexander's eyes as he stood close by, pretending to share in her joy. In another wing of the hospital, Evelyn's true son lay unclaimed. Rivers had placed him in the care of a nurse who believed she was simply looking after an infant awaiting transfer. Paperwork shuffled, records tampered with. Alexander had written checks, large enough to keep silence from those who needed silencing. And within hours, an unsuspecting adoptive family, arranged by Vanessa's shell of an identity, would be ready to take that child away. Vanessa, for her part, was in a private suite as well, though under a false name. She had gone into labor that very night, the result of a short-lived affair from months before she met Alexander. She planned to give the baby up for adoption, forging an agreement that would net her a generous payoff. Little did she know, Alexander's plan for that child was far more nefarious. Through an elaborate set of instructions, he ensured Vanessa was heavily sedated after childbirth, so she wouldn't fully comprehend the immediate aftermath. Her child was gone before she could even hold him. The official narrative was that the adoptive parents took custody immediately after birth, which she'd agreed to. Thinking she'd be free of the burden, Vanessa signed the final paperwork in a haze, believing she'd never see or hear about that infant again. 2 days later, well after the drug-induced fog cleared, she demanded answers from the on-duty nurse. "I want to know if the child is in good hands," Vanessa said tersely. "Don't I have a right to confirm the adoptive parents' information?" She had second thoughts, her maternal instincts flaring too late, or perhaps it was guilt. But the staff, under strict orders, provided minimal information. All she got was a vague reassurance that everything proceeded smoothly and that the adoptive family had left with the baby. When Vanessa finally confronted Alexander, calling him from a hospital corridor to demand clarity, he brushed her off with carefully chosen words. "Vanessa, you signed the adoption agreement. There's nothing more to discuss," he said, as though bored. Then he hung up. He was at Evelyn's side, doting on his wife and the baby boy she now believed was her own. Vanessa never suspected that the same child she had carried was in Evelyn's arms, not halfway across the country with strangers. In those first days, Evelyn was in a blissful daze of motherhood. She texted friends pictures of Liam, posted a modest announcement online, and told her parents how much he resembled her father around the eyes. Nobody questioned the infant's lineage. To them, he looked like a perfect blend of Evelyn and Alexander. Alexander, however, was a bundle of restless energy. The magnitude of what he'd done kept him up at night, but not necessarily out of remorse, more out of fear of being discovered. He rationalized his act by telling himself that this was best for his future. He believed that once the dust settled, he would have a life free of the complications that his real child might have brought. Yet a gnawing disquiet ate at him whenever he gazed upon the child. He wondered if he might grow to hate the child, or if some cosmic karma would land upon him. He also wondered how Vanessa would react if she ever uncovered the actual fate of her baby. Weeks turned into months. Evelyn and Alexander adjusted to the new routines of caring for a newborn. Sleep-deprived but elated, Evelyn lived for every coo, every tiny smile, every milestone. Alexander feigned paternal pride, playing his part in a manner that occasionally even convinced himself he was the father of that child. Yet beneath his polished exterior, cracks emerged. Guilt can corrode even the most iron-willed individual, and in Alexander's case, it manifested in nightmares and a heightened sense of paranoia. He began to snap at Evelyn over trivialities, especially when she would gush about how Liam was definitely taking after his father. He found himself drinking more, staying out late under the pretense of business dinners. Sometimes he'd wake in a cold sweat, certain he'd heard a baby crying in a dream, only to realize it was the memory of the real child's cries echoing in his mind from that fateful night in the hospital. Vanessa, too, felt something amiss. Although she'd told herself she wanted nothing to do with her biological child, a relentless curiosity plagued her. She noticed oddities in Alexander's behavior, how he seemed oddly distant whenever she brought up the subject of the adoption or even children in general. She discovered small hints in the hospital billing statements that didn't align with what she'd been told. While rummaging through some of Alexander's paperwork in his home office late one evening, under the guise of helping with administrative tasks, she found references to a large cash transfer to a doctor, Lionel Rivers. A prickle of dread coursed through her. Why would Alexander pay her obstetrician such a large sum of money? Something dark, something monstrous lurked at the edges of her reasoning. Though she couldn't piece it all together yet, she sensed that if she dug deeper, she might unearth a horrifying conspiracy. Given her own cunning nature, Vanessa wasn't going to rest until she found the answers. Her suspicions grew stronger when she saw pictures of Evelyn's baby for the first time at a corporate gala. Evelyn attended briefly with Alexander, proudly showing off baby Liam to well-wishers. Dressed in an adorable knitted sweater, the infant had wide, curious eyes and a shock of dark hair that could have belonged to any newborn, but something about those eyes tugged at Vanessa's maternal gut. She felt an odd jolt of recognition she couldn't explain. Fear and anger swirled inside her, but she needed irrefutable proof before confronting Alexander. Determined to ferret out the truth, Vanessa started by bribing a low-level employee in the hospital's administrative department for access to birth records on the night both she and Evelyn delivered. The employee hesitated but caved when offered a sum that eclipsed their monthly salary. Through that connection, Vanessa acquired partial documents indicating that Evelyn's baby was recorded as male infant, 7 lbs 4 Oz, with a notation about the baby going for an extended observation. Vanessa also found records of another baby, male infant, 6 lbs 15 Oz, delivered around the same time, whose mother's name was blacked out due to private adoption. Something in the sequence of events and times didn't add up. She noted Dr. Rivers's presence in both cases. She recalled his cameo in her own labor, which was strange because, officially, she had been assigned a different obstetrician. The more she uncovered, the more certain she became that Alexander had orchestrated some monstrous swap. Her suspicions were confirmed one evening when she decided to stake out Dr. Rivers's residence. She cornered him as he arrived home, stepping out of his sleek European sedan. It was a perilous move, but Vanessa was at her wit's end. "You're going to tell me the truth," Vanessa hissed, stepping out from the shadows of the porch, "or I'll have every reporter in this city on your doorstep by morning, Doctor." Rivers, sweaty and visibly startled, attempted to deny everything, but Vanessa pressed him with scraps of information she had gleaned, including the bribe. Alexander had paid him. Faced with the possibility of losing his medical license and going to prison, Dr. Rivers broke. His voice quivered as he confessed, "It was a baby swap. Alexander wanted your child with Evelyn. He had me switch them right after birth, while both mothers were vulnerable." Vanessa's world lurched. She had to brace herself against the porch railing to keep from collapsing. "What are you saying? Are you telling me that Evelyn is raising my baby right now?" she asked, her voice trembling with rage and disbelief. Dr. Rivers nodded mutely, tears of shame welling in his eyes. "I never thought it would go this far." He said it was to protect everyone. A primal scream tore from Vanessa's throat. She turned and fled into the darkness, numb with fury, heartbreak, and a hunger for revenge. In the following days, she devised a plan of her own. She wanted her baby back, but more than that, she wanted to bring Alexander's world crashing down. Vanessa leveraged her cunning and her access to the corridors of Caldwell Industries. She found a private law firm, one notorious for handling scandalous paternity suits. She showed them the evidence and threatened to go public if they didn't help her reclaim custody. It became a game of cat and mouse, Vanessa ensuring the lawyers were well compensated, and the lawyers salivating at the chance to bring a high-profile scandal to the courts. Yet, they all knew a direct assault might backfire if Alexander managed to cover his tracks, or, worse, countersue. A thorough approach was needed. At the same time, Vanessa toyed with the idea of going straight to Evelyn. She wondered how a gentle soul like Evelyn would react if she discovered she'd been loving and nurturing someone else's baby while her own was lost to her. But Vanessa also felt pangs of jealousy. Part of her wanted to spare Evelyn more pain, especially because she recognized that Evelyn was an unwitting victim. Another part, though, wanted Evelyn to feel the same agony and betrayal. Emotions warred within Vanessa's mind until she decided Evelyn should at least know the truth. The real problem was that no one, including Vanessa, knew where Evelyn's true biological child had ended up. According to Dr. Rivers, Alexander had arranged for the baby to be handed off to a private adoption service. That child could be anywhere, possibly in a different state or even a different country. This was the part that Vanessa couldn't abide. Her own baby was safe, ironically cared for by Evelyn, but Evelyn's actual baby was lost in the system. As the days passed, an uncanny set of events began to wear down Alexander's carefully built empire. A rumor about fraudulent business practices at Caldwell Industries bubbled up in the local financial press. The share price started slipping, and Alexander faced heated board meetings. At the same time, the CFO, his original confidant in hiring Vanessa, resigned abruptly under suspicious circumstances. Anonymous letters accusing Alexander of unethical conduct reached the desks of major journalists. Then, in a more direct blow, an investor lawsuit threatened to freeze Caldwell Industries' assets. While none of these events were overtly tied to the baby swap, a sense of unstoppable doom settled over Alexander. It was as though fate, or karma, had begun its retribution. Alexander, frantic, tried to hold everything together. He spent less and less time at home, leaving Evelyn to care for baby Liam almost exclusively. Their once lovely home now felt stark and empty. Evelyn noticed Alexander's tension but believed it to be related to business. She tried to comfort him, but he pulled away. Now she found herself alone on most nights, singing lullabies to her son, confiding in him the sadness she felt. Evelyn's discovery of Alexander's treachery began with an innocuous hint. She was flipping through receipts to finalize their household budget, a habit she'd kept from her modest upbringing, when she discovered an invoice from a private investigation firm. It was dated just weeks before Liam's birth and referenced Target via Rivers. Overcome with curiosity, Evelyn quietly searched online to see if the firm specialized in corporate investigations or personal matters. What she found was a direct link to a PI known for resolving parentage disputes. Anxiety knotted in her stomach. Why would Alexander hire a PI to investigate a woman named V.R. Rivers? She recognized the last name Vanessa Rivers, the marketing consultant from Caldwell Industries, who was rumored to have a close working relationship with her husband. Evelyn's mind raced, drawing possible conclusions she tried not to believe. Trembling, she combed through more paperwork in Alexander's study, discovering the suspiciously large payment to Dr. Lionel Rivers. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to form in her mind. It was something about Vanessa, about a child, about secret medical transactions. Unwilling to let her imagination spiral, she decided to confront Alexander directly that night. When he came home, reeking of expensive whiskey, Evelyn stood in the living room, baby Liam sleeping in a cradle nearby. She confronted him calmly at first, asking about the pie invoice. He tried to brush it off, but Evelyn stood her ground, demanding a full explanation. His attempts to dismiss her as paranoid only fueled her desperation. In a moment of panic, Alexander realized that if he continued to stonewall her, she might dig deeper. He calculated that the best course of action was to spin a half-truth. "Evelyn," he said softly, reaching for her hands, "I hired the investigator because Vanessa was blackmailing me. She claimed to have damaging information about my business and the baby. She said if I didn't pay, she'd spread rumors that Liam wasn't my child. I couldn't let that tarnish our family's name." At the mention of blackmail and Liam, Evelyn's heart rate surged. "What do you mean?" she claimed. "Liam isn't your child. That's impossible, he's ours." Alexander sighed, feigning the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Vanessa's insane," he said. "She came up with some story that her baby was swapped with ours. She said the hospital records could be forged. It's all nonsense. I didn't want to worry you, so I paid for a pie to shut down her lies." Evelyn was reeling. The story sounded too wild to be true, but her intuition screamed that Alexander was holding something back. She decided to act as though she believed him, hugging him and whispering assurances that she trusted his intentions. But inside, she resolved to verify the truth on her own. Over the next week, Evelyn made discreet inquiries at Johns Hopkins Hospital. She spoke with nurses who'd been on duty the night. Liam was born. One of them, an older woman near retirement, let slip that Dr. Rivers had insisted on personally handling Liam's checkups right after birth, a break from standard hospital protocol. Another nurse admitted she had been asked to recheck baby identification bands, something she found odd but didn't question at the time. These anomalies haunted Evelyn's every waking moment. She recalled glimpsing Vanessa at a corporate gathering a few weeks back, noticing how the woman had stared at Liam with an unsettling mixture of longing and despair. Could it be possible that Vanessa's allegations were real, not just a blackmail scheme? In a moment of moral fortitude, Evelyn decided to take a DNA test. She collected a saliva sample from herself and baby Liam, then mailed it to a reputable lab in a neighboring state, hoping to avoid any tampering. The results would either assuage her fears or confirm her darkest suspicions. Every day felt like an eternity as she waited. It was during this waiting period that Vanessa, through her lawyers, reached out to Evelyn directly. In a confidential letter, Vanessa wrote, "Evelyn, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I have undeniable proof that the baby you hold is biologically mine. If you want answers, come to the Fulton Hotel on Oak Street, Suite 1202, alone." Evelyn's hands shook as she held the letter, reading and reading the words. A part of her was terrified of meeting Vanessa, worried that everything she cherished might be ripped away. Another part knew she needed clarity, whatever the price. On the appointed day, she made an excuse about visiting a friend and slipped out of the house, heart thudding. She arrived at the Fulton Hotel, took the elevator to the 12th floor, and nervously knocked on the door. Vanessa answered, still the picture of cool elegance, but her eyes betrayed anguish. She invited Evelyn in and locked the door behind her. What followed was a torrential confession. Vanessa explained her own pregnancy, her plan to give the baby up for adoption, and the bizarre revelation from Dr. Rivers that Alexander had orchestrated a switch. She presented partial hospital records, dated receipts, and a written confession from Dr. Rivers secured under legal pressure. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming. As Vanessa recounted every harrowing detail, tears streamed down Evelyn's face. Each puzzle piece clicked into place, the hush money, the forged paperwork, and Alexander's unwavering denial. The evidence left no doubt. The boy she had nurtured for months was not her biological child. Her baby, her real flesh and blood, was out there, a missing part of her heart. By the time Vanessa finished, Evelyn was shaking uncontrollably. She had never experienced such a profound betrayal. To think Alexander, the man she trusted with her life, had stripped her of the chance to raise her own child. Furious devastation surged through her. "Where is my baby now?" she asked in a trembling voice. Vanessa's face fell. "I don't know. Alexander arranged a private adoption. Dr. Rivers said he might be in another state by now." The cold silence followed, punctuated by Evelyn's muffled sobs. Evelyn left the hotel in a daze. The world felt surreal, as if she were an observer in someone else's tragedy. She returned to the house and found Alexander in his study, pacing. He turned to her, about to speak, but she cut him off with a single question. "Why did you do it?" The color drained from his face. He tried to stammer out a denial, but she unleashed all the information Vanessa had shared. Like a cornered animal, Alexander lashed out, yelling that he had no choice, that it was necessary to protect our future. His twisted reasoning poured out, though the words made little sense to Evelyn. She felt physically ill. Their argument escalated. She demanded the location of her real child. He offered vague excuses and half-hearted reassurances that he could fix it. Stricken by grief, Evelyn told him to stay away from her and baby Liam, threatening to involve the police if he refused to tell the truth. She left him standing in the living room, mouth agape, as she stormed upstairs to pack a suitcase for herself and the child she believed now belonged to Vanessa. In a heart-wrenching scene, Evelyn softly told the infant she had named, "Liam, I love you so much, baby, but I have to do what's right." She called Vanessa, explaining that she was prepared to relinquish him if the DNA test confirmed the parentage. However, Vanessa, equally shaken, insisted that they fight together to find Evelyn's real son before making any final decisions about custody. It was a moral stand that neither woman had expected to take, but a shared maternal instinct compelled them to do what was right for both children. Teaming up, albeit warily, Evelyn and Vanessa launched a desperate search for the child who had been whisked away. They hired a team of investigators more reputable than the one Alexander had used and pored over adoption agency records, forging legal motions to unseal any closed adoption files pertaining to that fateful night. The process was maddeningly slow, burdened by bureaucratic red tape and privacy laws designed to protect adoptive parents and birth mothers. During this time, the DNA test results arrived in a sealed envelope. Evelyn hardly needed the lab's verdict to confirm what she already knew, but seeing it in black and white shattered her anew. The baby she had called Liam was a 99.9% match to Vanessa Rivers and 0% match to her. She clutched the results, sobbing uncontrollably in Vanessa's presence. For a moment, the two women set aside their differences, locked in shared sorrow over Alexander's manipulations. To complicate matters, Vanessa found herself struggling with unexpected maternal feelings. Initially, she'd wanted to give up her baby, but seeing photos of the little boy smiling, hearing about his milestones from Evelyn, and witnessing Evelyn's own heartbreak changed something in Vanessa. She no longer saw him as an unwanted burden. She realized she wanted to hold her baby, to make amends for even considering giving him up. It was a complicated emotional terrain, and she had no road map. Meanwhile, Evelyn yearned desperately for her own flesh and blood. In a bittersweet twist, both women had come to love the child they did not birth. Alexander spiraled into crisis. His business faced multiple lawsuits, sparked by internal whistleblowers who exposed questionable accounting practices. His CFO's abrupt resignation turned into a liability When the CFO testified to regulators that Alexander had falsified reports to secure inflated valuations, investors sued, the board threatened to oust him, and the media smelled blood. Articles mocking the fall of the once proud Caldwell Industries circulated widely. In his personal life, everything unraveled. Evelyn had left him, refusing to see him except through her attorney. She filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. Despite the hush money paid to Dr. Rivers, rumors of a baby swap scandal began to swirl, especially after Vanessa's lawyers reached out to certain tabloids. Alexander found himself hounded by paparazzi who shouted invasive questions at him whenever he ventured from his penthouse. In a final attempt to salvage his business, Alexander tried to file for bankruptcy protection, hoping to shield certain assets. But legal entanglements complicated the process, leaving him teetering on the edge of financial ruin. The vast fortune he once flaunted was eroding at a shocking pace, consumed by legal fees, settlement costs, and plummeting share values. Despite his dire straits, Alexander clung to the hope that he could still manipulate the outcome of the baby scandal. He threatened to countersue Vanessa for defamation, claiming she willingly gave up the child. He tried to pressure Evelyn into keeping quiet for the sake of their public image, but the world had turned against him. No amount of money could restore what he had lost: his family's trust, his business empire, and soon, perhaps, his freedom if criminal charges were filed. After weeks of exhaustive searching, Evelyn and Vanessa's investigative team finally located a lead. A private adoption agency in Pennsylvania disclosed that a baby boy had been handed over by a third-party guardian matching Dr. Rivers's description. The baby was then placed with a married couple named the Hendersons, who had relocated to Connecticut. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest. She contacted the Hendersons through the agency, initially met with resistance. The Hendersons were protective, fearing a scam or a custody battle. But once Evelyn and Vanessa supplied legal documents proving the baby had been illegally taken from Evelyn, the Hendersons agreed to a meeting, though they insisted on a cautious, mediated environment to protect themselves and the baby they had come to love. The meeting was set for a bright afternoon in a law office in downtown Hartford. Evelyn's stomach churned with nerves as she entered the waiting room, Vanessa by her side. The Hendersons arrived soon after, a baby boy in their arms, around 6 months old by now. The moment Evelyn saw him, her world shifted. She recognized him in a way that transcended physical features, a deep, primal bond. Tears sprang to her eyes as she approached the child, who gazed up at her with innocent curiosity. Mistress. Henderson explained that they had struggled to conceive for years and had resorted to private adoption. They had no idea the process had been tainted with deceit. While they felt enormous sympathy for Evelyn, they also loved the child deeply after nurturing him for months. The situation was heart-wrenching for both sides. No one wanted to break a family, yet the child had a right to be with his biological mother, if that was her wish. Legal negotiations stretched on for days. Ultimately, a compassionate judge recognized the gravity of the wrongdoing that had separated Evelyn from her child. He ordered a transition period, allowing Evelyn to bond with her baby gradually while respecting the Hendersons' emotional ties. A visitation schedule was set, with the possibility of full custody returning to Evelyn if all went smoothly. In a bittersweet arrangement, the Hendersons received acknowledgement for their role and were allowed to maintain limited contact if they wished, to avoid traumatizing the child with a sudden, total separation. Vanessa, standing by during the proceedings, felt a strange sense of relief and sorrow. She saw the joy in Evelyn's face, reflecting the wonder of reconnecting with her own son. It made her question every choice that had led her here. As for baby Liam, the boy that Evelyn had raised since birth, Vanessa arranged a legal process to establish her own custody. She, too, sought a gradual transition to avoid upending Liam's life overnight. By the time the dust settled, Vanessa had done something unexpected. She apologized to Evelyn. "I never wanted this," she said softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "But I was selfish. I wanted Alexander's attention. I didn't realize how far he would go, how far I would let him go." Evelyn stared at her for a moment, then offered a tentative embrace. The two women, once rivals, had been bonded by the trauma inflicted on them by Alexander. They each bore scars from his manipulations, and though they might never be close friends, they shared a deep understanding of the pain he had caused. In a dramatic twist, Vanessa's attorneys decided to press charges against Alexander on behalf of her child, citing conspiracy, fraud, and child endangerment. Evelyn also joined the lawsuit, demanding justice for the anguish of her baby's abduction. The case turned into a media firestorm. The revelations of the baby swap overshadowed the corporate scandals, painting Alexander Caldwell as a man devoid of moral constraints. People were appalled that someone so privileged would commit such a heinous act simply to maintain control over his personal and financial life. The trial took months, but the outcome was inevitable. Alexander was found guilty of multiple counts, including conspiracy and falsification of medical records. Dr. Rivers, who cooperated with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence, testified in chilling detail about the night of the swap. Vanessa confirmed his testimony, producing receipts and recorded phone calls. Evelyn tearfully recounted her experiences, describing how her life had been torn apart. In a final moment of karmic justice, the judge handed down a lengthy prison sentence, declaring Alexander a danger to societal and familial norms. The press had a field day, splashing headlines like "From Millionaire to Monster, the horrifying baby swap saga." His reputation was destroyed, his fortune decimated by legal fees and civil settlements. In the end, no one mourned the fall of Alexander Caldwell. He became a cautionary tale, a man who tried to bend fate to his will, only to be crushed beneath the weight of his own malice. In the months and years that followed, Evelyn rebuilt her life with her rightful son, whom she named Lucas. The transition was challenging. He had bonded with the Hendersons, and it took time for him to adjust to a new environment. But with love, patience, and therapy, the two formed a profound connection. Evelyn's parents also embraced their long-lost grandson, showering him with affection in an attempt to make up for lost time. As for baby Liam, Vanessa embarked on a path of responsible motherhood, something she never imagined for herself. She found a modest apartment near her mother's nursing facility, balancing her time between caring for Liam and building a career consulting for smaller companies. While she could no longer rely on Alexander's fortunes, she discovered a strange sense of fulfillment in forging her own path, free from the manipulative entanglements of the past. Evelyn and Vanessa maintained a cautious yet respectful relationship. They met occasionally so that the two boys, so entwined by the circumstances of their births, could know each other. It was a bittersweet arrangement, marking a new beginning forged from a shared tragedy. Over time, they developed a mutual empathy, two mothers who had faced the unimaginable and lived to tell the tale. Dr. Rivers lost his medical license and served a reduced sentence, after which he moved out of state, seeking anonymity. The Hendersons, having grieved the loss of Lucas, adopted a baby girl through a fully transparent process. They stayed in touch with Evelyn, exchanging photographs and letters, ensuring that Lucas had some sense of connection to the family that once cared for him. Karma had indeed struck Alexander Caldwell with ruthless precision. In prison, he was just another inmate, deprived of the luxuries he once took for granted. Letters from lawyers and creditors piled up, each one demanding money or detailing another lawsuit. He spent hours in the prison library, trying to research appeals that went nowhere. When he wasn't fending off threats from other inmates, he was haunted by nightmares of crying babies in a dark hospital corridor, their wails echoing, accusing him of robbing them of their rightful lives. The few times he tried to contact Evelyn or Vanessa, his calls went unanswered. With no allies left, no fortune to bail him out, Alexander was left to face the consequences of his actions in the most isolating place imaginable. In the end, he had no one to blame but himself. Outside those prison walls, life continued forward, shaped by both heartbreak and hope. Evelyn, once the dutiful wife, emerged stronger and more confident. She found success launching her own design studio, using her creativity to support her child and fund charitable causes. Vanessa, once the cunning mistress, softened into a more caring woman, discovering the reward of genuine responsibility and real love for her son. And so the millionaire who switched his pregnant wife's baby at birth discovered too late that money could not protect him from moral decay. The shocking reaction of the mistress, once a catalyst for his secret life, only accelerated his downfall. In the end, fate and karma spared no mercy. Bonds shattered, reputations imploded, and yet, out of the wreckage, a new kind of strength and solidarity emerged for those who had been wronged. Conclusion, approximately 150 words. Thank you for watching this harrowing tale of twisted deceit and ultimate retribution. We've witnessed how one man's greed and betrayal unraveled not only his fortune, but also the very foundations of his relationships. We've seen a wife robbed of her child, a mistress manipulated into heartbreak, and two innocent babies caught in a terrible lie. Yet, amid the darkness, remarkable courage and resilience shone through. The mothers joined forces, reclaimed what was stolen, and forged a future shaped by truth rather than deceit. Their journey teaches us that no matter how deep the betrayal, justice and karma find a way to restore balance. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world and helps us continue bringing you captivating stories of tragedy, redemption, and everything in between. Until next time, thank you for watching.